You know, for the Romans, the world was pretty black and white. There was civilization, that was them, of course, and then there were the barbarians. And right across the Adriatic Sea, that's where they saw the Illyrians. Roman historians like Polybius, they didn't pull any punches. They painted them as these savage pirates, a chaotic threat that just had to be dealt with. He even called them the enemies of all mankind. I mean, wow, that is quite a reputation. But you gotta ask, right? Was that the whole story? No way. To really get this epic clash of civilizations, we have to peel back all those layers of Roman propaganda and figure out who the Illyrians really were.
Okay, so first things first, and this is absolutely crucial. There was no single unified Illyrian nation. It's not like you could just point to a spot on the map and say, that's Illyria. The reality was way, way more complicated.
The name Illyrian itself is kind of a historical accident. You see, the people we call Illyrians, they never called themselves that. It was an outside label, a catch-all term that their Greek and Roman neighbors slapped on them. In their own minds, they were members of their specific tribes, the Dalmatae, the Ardii, the Talantai. Think of them as this incredible mosaic of different peoples, all scattered across a really rugged landscape.
But even without one big kingdom, they were definitely connected by a shared culture. Their religion, for example, was deeply tied to nature, with a powerful sun cult and secret animals like the serpent. They were masters of metalworking, and above all else, they were legendary warriors and absolutely brilliant sailors, building these incredibly fast warships that let them rule the Adriatic.
All right, now we jump to the 3rd century BCE, and this is where that whole mosaic of tribes starts to shift. One group, the Ardii, they pull off something nobody else had. They forge a seriously powerful kingdom. And this new kingdom? It was about to put them on a direct collision course with Rome.
The guy behind this new powerhouse was King Agron. He managed to unite a bunch of nearby tribes and basically weaponized their legendary sailing skills. He built this massive navy, and his forces got so strong they even beat the Greeks in a huge battle, making the Illyrians the undisputed masters of the whole region.
Well, after Agron's sudden death, his wife, Queen Teuta, grabs the throne. And let me tell you, she was maybe even more formidable. When Roman messengers showed up demanding she put a stop to Illyrian piracy, she gave this legendary comeback. For her, piracy wasn't a crime. It was just a state-sponsored part of their economy. She was basically telling the world's rising superpower to mind its own business.
Teuta's defiance, as you can imagine, lit a fuse. Her flat-out refusal to bow to Roman demands. And what happened next? The assassination of a Roman envoy? Well, that kicked off a century-long war for control of the seas.
The Illyrian Wars kind of played out in 3 acts. First, Rome's legions crossed the Adriatic for the very first time and just shatter Queen Teuta's navy. Then, a few years later, they had to go back to crush a rebellion by a former ally. And finally, in 168 BCE, they defeated the last Illyrian king, Gentius, which ended the kingdom for good. Rome was just systematic and totally, utterly relentless.
And just like that, the Illyrian kingdom was gone. Their independence was snuffed out, and their lands were just swallowed up by the brand new Roman province of Illyricum. It really seemed like their story was over, that they were destined to become just another footnote in Rome's long list of conquests.
But this is where their story takes one of the most astonishing, unbelievable turns in ancient history. The end of their kingdom was absolutely not the end of their story, not even close.
So their kingdom was gone, sure, but the Illyrian people were still there. And the Romans, always being practical, they recognized just how tough and skilled these people were in a fight. Illyricum quickly became a prime recruiting ground for the legions, supplying generations of tough-as-nails, disciplined soldiers. And these soldiers, they rose through the ranks. And here is the ultimate twist. Centuries later, during the crisis of the 3rd century, when the Roman Empire was literally falling apart at the seams, who saved it? It was emperors of Illyrian peasant stock. Guys like Aurelian, who they called the restorer of the world, and Diocletian, whose massive reforms put an end to all the chaos. The descendants of the so-called pirates had become the saviors of Rome itself. It's just incredible.
But here's the thing. Even as they rose to rule the Roman world, the Illyrians, as a distinct people with their own unique language and culture, they just started to fade into history, leaving behind a really fascinating puzzle for us to solve.
And the biggest piece of that puzzle is their language. The Illyrian tongue is extinct. We have 0 written texts left. But a lot of linguists believe it never truly died out. The leading theory is that it actually evolved into modern Albanian, which is a totally unique branch on the family tree of Indo-European languages. The evidence isn't a smoking gun, but it's really compelling. You see shared vocabulary and structures in ancient names, like the famous King Bardalis, whose name is incredibly close to the Albanian word for white, bar.
And so, that leaves us with this final big question. The story of the Illyrians is such a powerful reminder that history is never a simple tale of winners and losers. It's a story of resilience, of incredible transformation, and of the echoes of a forgotten people that it turns out can still be heard thousands of years later, if you just know where to listen.